man after their own hearts. If you can remember the presidency of Mr. Bill Clinton, whatever values he stood for were a reflection of the values of the people at that time. So God gave this nation a man after their own hearts. And all throughout history, you will find this repeated again and again. God gives a man for the nation after their own hearts. What their hearts were, what the values they were demanding, the values they were voicing out, that is the kind of leaders they will get. So after many kings leading Israel astray, so God decided to intervene in the affairs of Israel to give them an opportunity to turn back to Him. So God sent a prophet to prophesy to King Rehoboam that he will raise up a righteous king called Josiah. Now Josiah was not even born at that time. He was not even existent. But God said, I will raise up a king. And his name is Josiah. 1 Kings chapter 13 verse 2 tells us, and after many years, after Rehoboam, there was another king, and after that king, then Josiah was born. And when Josiah was born, when he was 8 years old, he was coronated as king. So he ascended the throne, and the first thing he did, the Bible tells us in 2 Kings chapter 22 verse 2, and he did what in the sight of Lord and walked in all the ways of his father David. He did not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. That's the first thing Josiah did. You see, God handpicked Josiah. God chose a leader after his own heart to give an opportunity for the nation to turn back to the living God. And then we read in 2 Kings chapter 22 verses 10 to 13 that the high priest found the book of the law hidden somewhere in the temple. They dusted it off, they brought it and they read it to the king. As soon as the book of the law was read to the king, the first thing that he did was to tear his clothes and humble himself, repenting before God for all the wasted years, for the nation of Israel to go away from God. In the same manner, God raised up a leader chosen by Him for this nation in these last days, Mr. Donald Trump. You know, whether we like him or we don't like him, we cannot expect everybody to be gentlemen, you know. Sometimes they have their rough natures. Whether they have their rough natures or their nice natures, I know one thing beyond all shadow of doubt, that Mr. Donald Trump was indeed chosen by God for such a time as this. You know, like I told you earlier, I'm ignorant of the many events that take place in the US and the political drama that take place in the White House or in the Capitol Hill. Firstly, it doesn't concern me. I'm already bogged down with the affairs in my own nation. Here, so it doesn't concern me, and I never really paid much attention when the election takes place. So whoever is going to come to office, sometimes some people, Americans, write to me for prayer. Please pray for this, pray for that. So I pray. You know, in the year 2008, when there was a fierce competition for Mr. Obama to win the election or for Joe McCain. I always keep forgetting his name, So, most Christians were voting for Joe McCain to win the elections. So was I. If I had an opportunity to vote, I would have cast my vote for McCain. But the Lord clearly told me, when I was speaking at a conference in Baton Rouge in that year, that Obama will be voted to office. I was shocked. I pleaded with the Lord. I said, Lord, that cannot be. I had an encounter with God. I was flying from Baton Rouge to go to Houston for a conference. And for some reason, because of bad weather, the plane had to land at Austin Airport and just stay on the runway for a long time until the weather is cleared. So while I think we were there for about 45 minutes or an hour, so I decided to just pray for the election that was going to take place in a few days. And as I was praying, my spirit was caught up to heaven. And there I appeared before a prophet's council. There are many, many councils in heaven appointed by God to oversee many events or many affairs that concerns the earth. There's a council that oversees the many, many end times events that will take place on this earth before the Lord Jesus comes. And there is a council that oversees the affairs of nations. Each nation there is a council that is overseen by some watchers and some elders in heaven and the many angels that are appointed over each nation. So when I came and stood at this council, and Abraham is the chairman of this council, and he's always seated at the head table. And that day, I found the prophet Moses was also seated at the table. And when I came and stood there, Abraham invited me to come and sit on a chair opposite to them. In our Indian culture, we are brought up to be very respectful to elders. One of the things is you don't sit before an elder. Like your father or your older uncles, you never sit before them. You always stand and you pay your respects to them. That was how we were brought up. So now, this is not just an earth elder, but these are saints in heaven. So naturally, I felt very reserved. How can I go and sit beside those great saints that you read very highly about in the Bible? So I just told them very reverently, I said, no sir, I'll just stand here. He said, no, come and sit here. And he was being very cordial, very friendly. So he said, come closer. So I took one step closer. He said, come on closer. So I took another step. He said, come and sit here. I said, no sir, how can I sit? So I told him, I don't even sit before my father. How can I sit before saints like you all? Then he said something. This seat has been appointed for you. You are part of our council. Sit here. So, even then, I sat at the edge of the chair. I felt very, very uncomfortable and scared. And I felt intimidated before such holy saints. And I noticed a file in the hands of Abraham, just like the files that you have in this nation. And on the file, on big bold letters, were the word USA. And Abraham had the file and he looked at me and he said, it has been decided in our council that Obama Barack will be the next president of the United States. When he said that, I said, forgetting before whom I was, I said, sir, how can that be? I just blurted out and said, no, it cannot be. It should be McCain. No, again, Abraham looked at me and said, no, it has been decided that Obama Barack will be the next president of the United States. I said, sir, but why? Then he listed down many reasons. And the reasons were all based on what America wanted out of Obama. They did not want out of McCain. In the hearts of the Americans, they did not want McCain. They believed all the false lies that Obama was speaking to the people. And those were the exact words Abraham told me, this man is giving false lies to this nation. But these people are believing all those lies, and they are rejecting the righteous man and wanted this unrighteous man. And within 6 months, the people of this nation will realize that this man had spoken lies to them. So again I appealed. I said, sir, but no. But very sternly I was told, now you go back and you tell the American people that Obama will be the next president. So I spoke at the meetings in Chicago and in Houston that Obama will be the next president. This was 5 days before the election. And the Christians were very upset. They said, how can you say this? What do you know about American politics? See, I told you earlier, I know nothing about all this. I only know one thing. What God says. That's all I know. And what I see in heaven, that I know. Anything else, I don't know. Is that good enough? And now the rest is history, that Obama won the election that year. Not only 1 term, but 2 terms. So this went on. Then came the year 2016. So Hillary Clinton was the obvious choice of the Democrats. Obvious choice, and she was posed, highly tipped to be the next president and to create history, the first woman president in the history of America. Everybody was hoping. Then came this unknown person, Mr. Donald Trump. The only thing I have ever heard about Mr. Donald Trump is that he is a businessman and the reality show Apprentice. I was not following Apprentice, Just caught a glimpse of few scenes. And the thing that he was so famous for is, you are fired. So that's the only image or knowledge that I have about Mr. Donald Trump. Other than that, I know nothing about him or know nothing about all this politics that's going to take place, But on the 10th of August, 2016, now before I tell you about the 10th of August, there were many people in America who have been shown that one day a man called Mr. Donald Trump will become the President of the United States. Some of them had seen this years ago. A man will be born called Donald Trump, and he will become the President of the United States. This was many years ago. And over the last many years, many people have seen visions or had received words from the Lord about Mr. Trump becoming the president. Now, I had no knowledge about all such visions or prophecies. Like I told you, I only make my annual visit to the US once every year in the month of August. So this is a rare visit that I made in July. Not a rare visit, extra visit. Extra visit. So, that particular day, on the 10th of August, I was not preaching that evening. Someone else was preaching. But while the worship was going on, I was just caught up in the worship. As I was lost in worshiping God, I heard a voice say, "Come up." The next moment, my spirit was caught up before the heavenly council in the very place where I stood years ago. And this time I saw the patriarch Abraham, and I stood in the very same spot where I first stood in the first time that I went there. As soon as I arrived there, Abraham looked at me and he acknowledged my presence. And he said, "Welcome and sit down." As I was about to go and sit down, suddenly I saw the spirit of Mr. Donald Trump come and stand in that place. So I looked at him, and I didn't want to think anything. I don't know why he came there or how he came there. But he was there. And then Abraham looked at me and he said, "This man will be the next president of the United States of America." So I looked at him. I didn't know anything about Mr. Trump, so I didn't say why this or why that. I was just listening to whatever they told me. And they listed saying why this man was chosen. The number one reason is because of his godly values. That's number one reason. The number two reason why Mr. Donald Trump was chosen as the 45th President of the United States is because God is giving this nation one last chance. One last chance. You know, just like Josiah, who was a very godly king, and then he had the law being read to him. I understand now that Mr. Trump reads the Bible every day, and there is prayer going on in the White House very regularly. Never before in the history of the United States of America. You know, after many years, finally, the White House is truly becoming a White House. The White House has truly become a White House because of the prayer incense that is rising up from the White House and going up before the throne of God. And just like King Josiah, who put things in his nation, Mr. Trump, used by God, is putting things right in this country. Okay, let's stop all the clapping. You reserve all your claps till the end, because we don't want any distraction here. One of the things that Mr. Trump put right is by standing with the nation Israel. You know, please don't clap. To stand with Israel is a solemn call God has given to this nation. This is your call, to stand together with the nation Israel, to be like a big brother protecting over the little brother. For such a purpose, God has raised you up. You know, once I read a historical document where the Prime Minister Ben-Gurion, when they were under attack, called Mr. Richard Nixon for help. And initially, Mr. Nixon refused to help Israel. And Ben-Gurion appealed to Mr. Nixon. He said, "If you will not help us, we will be wiped out." And Mr. Nixon asked for some days to think about it. And when he was alone in his office one day, suddenly something that his mother told him came to his remembrance. When he was a little boy, Mr. Nixon's mother told him, "Someday you will become the leader of this nation. And when you become the leader of this nation, you must help Israel. That's what his mother told him when he was a small boy. So Nixon's mother prophesied to her son that someday you will become the President of the United States of America. When you do, you must help Israel. As soon as he remembered that, now this is my destiny, he realized. The next moment, he picked the phone and he called the Prime Minister of Israel and he said, I am sending our warplanes to Israel to help you fight the war of independence. See, this is your destiny. And after that time, the many subsequent presidents that came refused to help Israel. And among the worst of your presidents is Obama, who was never for Israel, largely because of his Muslim background. That was the chief reason. He refused to help Israel. And you will recall that during the 8 years of his presidency, the nation of the US suffered great natural calamities, never before in the history. And it was God's judgment that he sent to this nation because of the leader. Because the leader refused to help Israel and allowed the nation to be under suffering. Now, God raised up another man to be a friend and a protector of Israel. Now, the Bible tells us in Genesis chapter 12 verse 3 that as long as America stands with Israel, she will be blessed. And your nation will have a turnaround in all areas of this nation, economically, technology-wise, in every education, every structure, as long as you bless Israel. Now this morning at 7:55, as I was meditating the Word of God, I had an encounter with the Lord Jesus Christ. I saw the Lord Jesus standing, a gigantic figure, on the east coast of the United States of America, on the very end of the east coast. Maybe it was on the coastline of New York. He stood there, very gigantic figure, and he had a long shepherd's rod in his hand, and he held this rod over the nation. The whole nation came under the rod. And then he spoke this word. In Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 37 says, I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. Another declaration of dependence. You are given one more chance. One more chance to enjoy. You know, it is so appropriate that on this day of your independence, the Lord is renewing His covenant with you.
Amen.
Renewing the covenant of dependence, of calling this nation back and uniting this nation back with Him as one nation under God. Now, what is this rod? This shepherd's rod is a rod of righteousness. What is the purpose? Threefold. To lead, to judge, and to examine. Now these are the words the Lord spoke to me concerning the US when He stretched the rod over this nation. Number one, He will judge the nation for political crimes. Now, I want to tell you again, I don't understand anything that I'm going to share with you now. Chiefly because I'm not an American. So I don't understand anything, but I just wrote down verbatim whatever the Lord spoke to me. So I'm going to share with you exactly as how I receive it from the Lord. And I'm sure you will understand all those things because you are in this nation, you have passed through all the history of this nation, you will know them better. He will judge the nation of political crimes. The decisions taken in secret to pass laws of unrighteousness. So I pondered in my heart, what are political crimes? So then the Lord answered, they are the decisions taken in secret to pass laws of unrighteousness. This was not pertaining to this time, but in the past. Such as, what are laws of unrighteousness? Such as the laws of abortion and authorizing same-sex marriage. These are laws of unrighteousness that were passed in this nation. And because of that, He will judge the nation of political crimes. Number 2, much damage and harm have been done during Mr. Obama's terms in office. So again, I don't understand all these things. But I pondered in my heart and asked the Lord questions. So what are they? Many secret plans of alliance were made, which would have been continued and brought fruits of destruction upon this nation if Hillary Clinton had won the 2016 election. The evil diabolical plans or the alliance that were done in the secret, they would all have continued if Mrs. Clinton had become the president. So it was God who put a stop there. It was God's finger. It's not the Russians, you know. I don't know why this nation is so hung up on the Russians. This reminds me of the Cold War back in the 70s. Have you watched James Bond movies? You know, every one of James Bond movies is about the Cold War between the US and the Russians. So this is like that, going back to the Cold War. It's not the Russians, it is the Holy God's finger. It is the finger of God that turned the election results around. Amen. You all know very well that even on the day of election, everybody was expecting Mrs. Clinton to win. Right?
No, I wasn't.
She was leading. She was way above in the vote count than Mr. Trump. He was going to be booed out. But suddenly there was a turnaround. Only God can do that. Not the Russians.
Thank you.
So get rid of the phobia about the Russians. They are about to win the World Cup. No, we will not allow that, okay? No. You pray for Brazil to win the World Cup. Okay. You know, looks... Okay, let's not go to World Cup. We'll come back. Now, that were the secret plans. But why God made this turnaround? No, for many years, I had a question in my heart. Millions of Americans have been praying for this country. for years and years and years. They've been praying and praying and praying. But nothing has been turning around for good in this country.